My name is Emily Parker. I'm 27. And by the week before Christmas, my family had already decided exactly how I would spend the holiday. They simply forgot to ask me. I was standing outside my parents' kitchen when I heard my mother discussing sleeping arrangements, dinner reservations, and the children's schedule as if she were managing a hotel. Then she said I could take the basement room because I would need to stay close to the little ones anyway. My father replied that hiring anyone would be pointless when I was available. My older sister had apparently promised everyone I would handle Christmas Eve, Christmas morning, and the adults-only dinner they had booked months earlier. I had not agreed to any of it. I had not even been invited into the conversation. For years, being single and child-free had made my time look empty to them, an open calendar they could fill whenever their own plans mattered more. Last Christmas, I had missed an important work call while everyone else celebrated upstairs. This year, they were preparing to do it again on an even larger scale. I walked back to my car without confronting anyone. I didn't cry, argue, or send a dramatic family message. I opened my phone, found the Florida trip my college friend had invited me on, and booked the last available seat. Then I let my family continue planning a perfect Christmas around a woman who would not be there. By Christmas Eve, every reservation, every promise, and every assigned task depended on my obedience. When they finally realized I was hundreds of miles away, the first scream came through my phone. What followed exposed far more than a ruined dinner plan and forced my family to discover the real price of treating my time as theirs. Before I tell you how one quiet booking turned our Christmas upside down, tell me what the weather is like where you are and whether it matches your mood today. I'm curious to see how far this story travels. The invitation to Florida had arrived 3 weeks earlier from my college friend Megan Collins. She had rented a small place near St. Augustine with 2 other women from our old university circle, and one person had canceled. At the time, I had told her I probably couldn't go because Christmas was complicated. That was the word I used whenever I didn't want to admit that my family treated my availability as shared property. The conversation outside my parents' kitchen finally made the complication simple. My mother, Linda, was not asking whether I could help. My father, Thomas, was not wondering whether I had plans. My older sister, Rachel, had already built the entire holiday around the assumption that I would surrender mine. I sat in my car and replayed what I had heard. Rachel and her husband, Eric, were bringing their 3 children on December 23rd. 2 cousins were coming the next day with 4 more. My parents had booked an adults-only dinner at a downtown hotel, and Rachel had arranged a long salon appointment before it. Their original childcare reservation had been canceled. According to my father, paying holiday rates would be ridiculous when Emily could do it. The ease with which he said my name bothered me more than the plan itself. He sounded as though he were referring to a folding table stored in the garage, something useful, familiar, and already owned. I wish I could say this was the first time. The previous Christmas, Rachel had handed me a list before I had taken off my coat. Snacks at 6 o'clock, baths at 7:30, keep everyone downstairs during the adults' gift exchange. I laughed because I thought it was a joke. She had stared at me and said, "You knew we needed you." That night, while the rest of the family ate prime rib upstairs, I sat on the basement carpet with a paper plate that had gone cold. At 9 o'clock, my manager called about a last-minute opening on a project team I had been trying to join for months. I missed the call because 2 children were arguing and another needed help finding pajamas. By the time I called back the next morning, the role had gone to someone else. Rachel said I was being dramatic when I told her. My mother said work opportunities came and went, but family memories were permanent. The memory that stayed with me was not the noise or the cold dinner. It was hearing everyone laugh above me while realizing no one had noticed I was missing. In March, Rachel asked me to watch the children for one urgent hour because Eric had a medical appointment. I moved a client meeting and drove across town. When I arrived, Eric was at work, perfectly healthy, and Rachel walked out wearing a spa robe under her coat. She said she had been exhausted and deserved a break. When I objected, she reminded me that I had no one depending on me. In July, my parents invited me to a family barbecue, then asked me to supervise the pool before I had even put down my bag. In October, my mother volunteered me to help at Rachel's school fundraiser without mentioning it until the organizer emailed me a schedule. Each event was small enough to excuse. Together, they formed a system. They protected one another's time by consuming mine. Sitting in the car, I asked myself a question I had avoided for years. If love always required me to disappear, what exactly were they loving? I called Megan. She answered on the second ring and said, "Please tell me you changed your mind." I asked whether the seat was still open. It was, but the fare would increase at midnight. I booked it before I could talk myself out of it. Megan asked whether I planned to tell my family. I looked through the windshield at my parents' glowing kitchen window. They had made weeks of plans involving me without one conversation. For once, I decided they could experience the same courtesy. I told Megan I would meet her at the airport on Christmas Eve. Then I took screenshots of the reservation, saved the confirmation email, and drove home. I felt guilty, but beneath the guilt was something steadier. It was not rage. It was the relief of finally refusing a role I had never accepted. Over the next 3 days, the family group chat became a record of everything they believed they were entitled to take from me. Rachel posted a color-coded Christmas schedule that looked like a corporate retreat itinerary. Arrival times, meal assignments, gift exchange, family photographs, hotel dinner, morning brunch. Beside every block involving the children, she had typed my name. Emily downstairs. One line read, "Emily handles dinner and bedtime." Another read, "Christmas morning includes a 4-hour window labeled Emily with kids while adults rest." No one asked whether the schedule worked for me. My mother replied with 3 heart emojis. My father wrote, "Perfect. This will save us a fortune." I stared at those messages for a long time. Then I saved the screenshots and said nothing. The old version of me would have corrected them immediately, then spent days negotiating down from 12 hours of childcare to 6, as if I were bargaining for a small portion of my own life. Silence felt uncomfortable, but it also exposed something useful. Without my resistance, they became more honest. Rachel announced that she had canceled the backup sitter because we're covered. My mother said she had moved 2 folding beds into the basement so I could sleep near the children. When an aunt asked whether I might want the upstairs guest room, Rachel replied, "Emily won't care. She barely sleeps during holidays anyway." That sentence almost made me break my silence. Instead, I packed. Megan sent me a short list: swimsuit, comfortable shoes, 1 dinner outfit, sunscreen, and absolutely no guilt. I put the list beside my suitcase and added a folder containing my work notes. I had a professional certification exam in early January, and Florida would give me quiet mornings to prepare. That detail mattered. The trip was not merely an escape from my family. It was a choice in favor of the future they kept asking me to postpone. On Thursday, my father called while I was wrapping gifts. He did not ask when I was arriving. He asked whether my car had enough room to transport 2 extra booster seats. I told him I was busy and would call later. His answer was impatient. "This is why we send schedules, Emily. Everyone needs to cooperate." I nearly laughed at the word everyone. Cooperation required consent. What they wanted was obedience with festive wrapping paper. After the call, I removed the gifts from the large family bag and repacked them into shipping boxes. I mailed each one directly to my parents' house. I included cards, but no note explaining my absence. I wanted there to be no claim that I had ruined Christmas for the children or withheld anything out of spite. My refusal had one target: the adults who had arranged their freedom by confiscating mine. Friday evening, Rachel sent me a private message. Mom says, "You've been weird. Don't start drama this year. We all need a relaxing holiday." The casual hypocrisy of it stunned me. Rachel wanted relaxation so badly that she had assigned me almost 20 hours of unpaid work. I typed several answers and deleted them. Finally, I wrote, "You should confirm every part of your plan with the people involved." She responded with a laughing emoji. "You're involved. Your family." That message became the final lock on my decision. Saturday morning, I checked into my flight online. My hands shook when the boarding pass appeared. For a few seconds, I imagined calling my mother, explaining everything, and giving them enough time to repair their plans. Then, another message arrived from her. "Please wear something presentable when guests arrive. You can change into comfortable clothes once you take the kids downstairs." She had chosen my clothing for a job I had never accepted. I put my phone face down. The temptation to warn them was not kindness anymore. It was conditioning. They had trained me to protect them from the consequences of ignoring me. That afternoon, Megan called to confirm our meeting point at the airport. She heard the tension in my voice and asked whether I was afraid they would be angry. I said yes. She asked whether their anger meant I had done something wrong. I could not answer immediately. That question stayed with me while I zipped my suitcase. On Sunday, the day before Christmas Eve, my mother left a voicemail reminding me to arrive by 10 in the morning and bring the patient attitude everyone loves about you. I listened twice, not because it was sweet, but because it revealed the role they had written for me: patient, useful, quiet, and endlessly available. I saved the voicemail with the screenshots. Then I turned off location sharing on my phone, scheduled a car to the airport, and placed my suitcase beside the door. I was no longer wondering whether they would be angry. I was wondering what they would reveal once I stopped making their selfishness convenient. Christmas Eve began at 6 o'clock in the morning with my mother calling twice before my alarm. I let both calls go to voicemail while I showered and dressed. Her first message was practical. Traffic would be heavy, so I should leave early. Her second was sharper. Rachel had changed her salon appointment and needed me by 9:30. I carried my suitcase downstairs, got into the waiting car, and watched my apartment building disappear behind me. The driver asked whether I was going home for Christmas. I looked at the airport destination on his screen and said, "Something like that." By 7:30, the group chat was active. My father asked who had moved the folding beds. Rachel complained that one of the children had opened a wrapped gift. My mother tagged me and wrote, "Please answer, we need to coordinate." I did not answer because there was nothing to coordinate. They had never included me in planning. They had only assigned me tasks. At the airport, I met Megan near security. She hugged me, looked at my phone vibrating in my hand, and asked whether I wanted her to hold it until boarding. I said no. Avoiding the confrontation entirely would have left them free to rewrite the story. I wanted to tell them once, clearly, that their emergency was the result of their assumption. At 9:15, Rachel called. I answered. She skipped hello. "Where are you? I need to leave in 15 minutes. I told her I was at the airport. There was a pause, then a short laugh. "Very funny. Which terminal are you picking Dad up from?" I said I was flying to Florida. Her voice changed instantly. She accused me of abandoning the family, ruining plans, and behaving like a teenager. I waited until she stopped for breath, then asked one question. "When did I agree to watch anyone?" She said, "Everyone knew I always did it." I told her habit was not consent. Rachel lowered her voice and delivered the sentence she must have believed would put me back in my place. Emily, you don't have a husband or children. Your time is not as complicated as ours. I had heard versions of that belief for years but never stated so cleanly. My time did not count because no one else had claimed it. I replied, then it should be easy for you to replace something you believe has no value. She called me cruel and said she would tell Mom. You won't have to, I said. She's calling now. I ended the call and answered my mother. Her first words were exactly as frantic as I had expected. Why aren't you here yet? Everyone is waiting. Behind her, people were talking over one another. A child was crying about missing shoes. My father shouted that the caterer had arrived 2 hours early. Rachel was demanding car keys. I looked through the terminal window at the plane being prepared and felt something inside me become very calm. Don't wait up, I said. I'm enjoying my own vacation. For a second, my mother made no sound. Then chaos erupted behind her. Rachel yelled that I had done this deliberately. My father asked whether the hotel would refund 6 dinner reservations. Someone knocked over a tray, and my mother snapped at everyone to be quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was low and furious. You knew we were depending on you. You were depending on an agreement you never made. We are your family. Family members ask. She said the sitter had been canceled because Rachel assured them I was available. Then Rachel shouted from the background that Mom had been the one to say I could not possibly have better plans. Their perfect united front cracked in less than a minute. My mother tried another approach. She said my father had paid a non-refundable deposit for the adults-only dinner. Rachel had paid for a salon package. Relatives were already arriving. Without me, someone would have to stay home. Yes, I said. One of the parents will have to stay with their own children. She reacted as if I had suggested something outrageous. Then she said, after everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? I could have listed every holiday day, weekend, canceled meeting, cold plate, and last-minute demand. Instead, I kept my answers simple. I am not repaying you. I am declining unpaid work. My father took the phone. He ordered me to change my flight and promised to reimburse the fee later. I told him boarding would begin soon. He said if I got on that plane, I should not expect the family to forget it. I hope you don't, I replied. I hope you remember to ask next time. He called my response disrespectful. Then an aunt's voice rose in the background, asking why they had canceled professional childcare without confirming with me. My father told her it was none of her business. She answered loudly enough for me to hear. You made it everyone's business when you invited us into this mess. That was the moment the argument shifted. Until then, my parents and Rachel had assumed they could present me as selfish and receive instant support. Instead, the relatives were beginning to ask questions. My mother grabbed the phone again and demanded that I explain what I had told people. I said I had told no one anything. Their own schedule was in the group chat. She went silent. I could hear Rachel whispering, "Delete it." I took a screenshot before the message disappeared. Megan touched my arm and pointed toward our boarding group. I told my mother I had to go. She said, "Emily, if you hang up, do not call me when you regret this." I looked at the gate, then at the saved schedule, showing my name beside every task. The only thing I regret, I said, is teaching you that I would always say yes. I ended the call, turned off my phone, and boarded the plane. When we landed in Florida, I turned my phone on and found 43 messages. The family group chat had divided into 3 camps. My parents insisted I had canceled at the last minute. Rachel claimed I had promised her privately. Several relatives asked them to produce the message where I had agreed. They could not. My Aunt Linda, the same woman I had heard in the background, had reposted Rachel's deleted schedule from her own screenshot and circled every place my name appeared. "This is not a holiday plan," she wrote. "This is a work roster." My cousin Marcus asked whether anyone had even offered to pay me. No one answered him. The adults-only dinner was now the center of the conflict. My father had booked a private room at an expensive hotel restaurant because he wanted to impress two relatives visiting from out of state. The deposit was non-refundable, and canceling on Christmas Eve meant losing the full amount. Rachel refused to stay home because she had bought a new dress and arranged the evening months earlier. My mother argued that as the grandmother, she had already done enough childcare in her life. My father said he was hosting and therefore could not miss dinner. Three adults who had treated my presence as automatic were suddenly forced to debate whose time was least valuable. The irony was so exact that I did not need to add anything. Megan and I collected our bags, met the others, and drove to the rental house. I had imagined feeling triumphant. Instead, I felt raw and strangely watchful, as though someone might appear and tell me the trip had been canceled because my family needed me. Megan noticed me checking my phone every few minutes. She asked what I was looking for. "Proof that I'm the villain," I admitted. She said, "They may call you one. That does not make it true." At the house, I received a private message from Rachel. "Send the screenshots you took. Mom is blaming me." I stared at it. She was not apologizing. She wanted evidence to redirect the blame. I replied, "The screenshots show all three of you participating." She immediately called. I declined. Then my father sent a message saying an emergency childcare agency could provide 2 caregivers, but the holiday rate, transportation charge, and same-day booking fee totaled nearly $2,000. He expected Rachel and Eric to pay half. Rachel replied that my parents had created the problem by volunteering me. My mother replied that Rachel had assured them I would comply. Eric, who had been almost silent until then, asked why his wife had canceled the original sitter before speaking to me. Rachel told him not to discuss private matters in the family chat. He answered, "You made Emily's private time a family resource. We can discuss the bill here too." That sentence changed the tone again. By late afternoon, the agency required immediate payment, or it would release the reservation. My father paid, then posted that Christmas was becoming financially absurd. Aunt Linda responded, "It became expensive when you discovered Emily's labor had market value." I read that line 3 times. For years, the family had framed my unpaid help as affection. The moment strangers charged for the same work, everyone understood it was labor. They simply had not wanted to acknowledge that when the worker was me. My mother called again. This time, she sounded controlled, which was more dangerous than shouting. She said relatives were judging her because I had allowed a misunderstanding to spread. She wanted me to write in the group that I had failed to communicate my plans. I asked whether she would also write that she had failed to ask. She said Christmas was not the time to assign blame. But it was the time to assign me 20 hours of childcare, I asked. She told me not to twist her words. I opened the saved voicemail in which she instructed me to arrive early and wear something presentable before taking the children downstairs. I sent the audio file to the group. Then I wrote one message for clarity. I was never asked and never agreed. I learned about the plan by overhearing it. I hope everyone has a safe holiday, but I will not accept responsibility for decisions made without me. I put the phone on silent. The message did what an argument never could. It removed the fog. My parents could no longer pretend there had been confusion, and Rachel could no longer claim a private promise. Relatives began recalling similar moments when one person's generosity had been converted into obligation. One cousin said, "My mother had volunteered him to repair a fence during a past reunion." An uncle mentioned being charged for groceries after being invited as a guest. The conversation widened from my absence to a pattern my parents had spent years disguising as family tradition. That evening, while we ate at a small restaurant near the rental house, Marcus sent me the final update. The emergency caregivers had arrived, but the adults-only dinner still fell apart. My father and Eric argued over the bill. Rachel arrived late because she had spent an hour defending herself. My mother cried in the hotel lobby after Aunt Linda refused to support her version of events. Several relatives left before dessert. The private room my father had booked to display a perfect family became the place where everyone finally discussed how that perfection had been manufactured. I did not laugh when I read it. I simply set my phone down. Their Christmas had not collapsed because I left. It had collapsed because I was no longer holding up a structure built on my silence. Christmas morning began quietly for me and expensively for them. I woke before the others, made coffee, and reviewed notes for my certification exam while the house was still silent. At 8, my phone displayed a message from the child care agency confirming that my father had listed me as the usual family caregiver when he explained the emergency. The message had been forwarded by Eric, who had discovered the booking receipt in Rachel's email. The agency's total charge had risen because the family asked the caregivers to remain through brunch. With gratuity, transportation, and holiday fees, the bill exceeded $2,700. My father wanted Rachel and Eric to reimburse him immediately. Eric refused until Rachel explained why she had canceled the original reservation. That argument uncovered another lie. Rachel had not canceled because she believed I had agreed. She had canceled because the professional sitter required a deposit, and Rachel wanted to use that money for her salon package and hotel dinner. She assumed she could pressure me later. My mother had known. My father had approved because he liked the savings. Each person had contributed a different excuse, but the plan was the same. Spend freely on themselves and use my time to balance the budget. Eric sent me a private apology. He admitted that he had benefited from the arrangement in previous years without asking enough questions. He said he and Rachel were having a serious conversation about money, honesty, and the way she treated me. I thanked him, but did not comfort him. That was another habit I was ready to end. Their discomfort did not create a new job for me. Around 10, Rachel posted a furious message saying I had humiliated her marriage and turned the relatives against our parents. She ended with, "I hope your vacation was worth destroying this family." I almost replied emotionally. Instead, I opened a spreadsheet I had started months earlier after a therapist suggested tracking favors that left me resentful. It contained dates, hours, canceled plans, fuel costs, and the reasons I had been given. I had never intended to send it to anyone. Now I calculated the hours of childcare I had provided during the previous 2 years and multiplied them by a conservative local rate. The total was $6,580, not including the work opportunity I had lost. I took a screenshot and sent it only to Rachel, my mother, and my father. "This is the value of the labor you accepted without payment," I wrote. "I am not requesting reimbursement. I am showing you what you have been calling love." My father replied that families did not send invoices to one another. I said, "Then families should not build budgets around unpaid labor they never requested." My mother accused me of keeping score. She was right. I had started keeping score because they always expected me to lose. By noon, more consequences arrived. Aunt Linda announced that she would host the next Christmas gathering and that all child care would be arranged in advance, paid for by the parents using it, and confirmed in writing. Several relatives supported her immediately. My mother had hosted Christmas for 14 years and treated the event as a proof that she was the center of the family. Losing that role hurt her more than the agency bill. She called Linda ungrateful. Linda answered that hospitality was not hospitality when one guest was secretly made to work. My father then withdrew from the group chat, but not before accusing everyone of overreacting. Marcus forwarded a final exchange from the hotel. One visiting relative had asked why I was absent, and my mother had said I preferred beaches to family. Linda played the voicemail I had shared. The table went silent. My mother left before the meal ended. The image she had protected, generous hostess, devoted mother, perfect Christmas organizer, did not survive contact with her own words. I felt the old impulse to call and repair the damage. Then I asked myself, why was I responsible for protecting a reputation that depended on hiding how I was treated? I put the phone away. Megan and I spent the afternoon walking through a holiday market, then returned to the house for dinner. I did not need their celebration to fail completely. I needed the truth to remain visible long enough that they could not push me back into place. That night, my mother sent one final message. We need to meet when you return. There will be consequences. I read it without fear. For the first time, consequences were not a threat reserved for me. They were already sitting at my parents' table, printed on a child care receipt, repeated in the family chat, and reflected in every relative who now understood what their perfect holidays had cost me. I returned to Austin 4 days after Christmas with a completed study plan, a sunburn on one shoulder, and no intention of apologizing. My parents asked me to come to their house that evening. I agreed on one condition. Rachel and Eric would be there, and no one would interrupt while I spoke. When I arrived, the folding beds were still stacked in the hallway. The house looked ordinary, but the room felt different. My father had the agency receipt on the table. My mother's eyes were swollen. Rachel sat beside Eric with her arms crossed, and for once, she did not look confident that the family would automatically support her. My father began by saying my behavior had been immature. I placed printed copies of the group schedule, the deleted message, my mother's voicemail transcript, and Rachel's private claim that my time mattered less on the table. We can discuss my behavior, I said, after we agree on what happened. My mother tried to call it a misunderstanding. Rachel blamed my mother for volunteering me. My father blamed Rachel for canceling the sitter. I let them speak until the accusation circled back to me. Then I said, "The difference between you is not innocence. It's who expected to avoid the bill." I told them my boundaries. They would never volunteer my time again. Any request for help had to be made directly, with reasonable notice, and no would be accepted without punishment. I would not sleep in the basement to remain near the children. I would not miss work, exams, trips, or rest because another adult had planned around my compliance. Most importantly, they would correct the story with the entire family. My mother objected immediately. She said she had already been embarrassed enough. Embarrassment is not the same as accountability, I replied. Rachel said I was enjoying this. I told her I had enjoyed Florida. This meeting is simply the price of having a relationship with me. Eric asked what correction I wanted. I handed them a short statement. Emily was never asked to provide child care and never agreed. We made plans based on an assumption, canceled paid help, and blamed her when our plan failed. That was wrong. My father refused to send it. I stood and picked up my coat. My mother panicked when she realized I was willing to leave without another argument. She asked whether I was cutting them off. I said their next choice would answer that question. For several seconds, no one moved. Then Eric took out his phone and sent the statement from his account, adding that he had benefited from the assumption and apologized. Rachel stared at him, furious, but the message was already delivered. Aunt Linda replied with a single sentence. "Thank you for finally telling the truth." My mother sent the statement 10 minutes later. My father waited until the next morning. The apology did not repair everything, and I did not pretend it did. Rachel and Eric entered counseling after the fight over the canceled sitter and hidden spending. They reimbursed my parents for half of the emergency agency bill, which meant Rachel's planned winter getaway was canceled. My father paid the remaining half and lost the hotel deposit. My mother was no longer hosting the next family Christmas, and several relatives stopped allowing her to assign tasks on their behalf. These were not punishments I created. They were costs that had always existed. Finally, they returned to the people who incurred them. Rachel did not speak to me for nearly 2 months. When she eventually called, she did not begin with an apology. She asked whether I understood how difficult parenting was. I told her I did, which was exactly why she should respect the time of anyone she asked to help. She went quiet, then admitted she had assumed I would always give in because I always had. That was the closest she came to honesty. I told her I was open to rebuilding our relationship, but not the old arrangement. The next time she asked me to babysit, she did it 3 weeks in advance, offered to pay, and accepted my refusal without complaint. My parents changed more slowly. My mother still used phrases like, "after everything we have done," but they no longer moved me. My father became careful about group schedules. He had learned that writing someone's name in a box did not create consent. In January, I passed my certification exam. The qualification helped me earn the project role I had missed the previous year, along with the raise that covered the entire Florida trip several times over. Megan sent me a message saying the vacation had been the best last-minute decision we had ever made. She was wrong about one part. It had not been last minute. It had been years overdue. People sometimes call what I did revenge. And perhaps it was. I did not sabotage dinner, expose a secret, or invent a punishment. I simply removed the free labor that allowed everyone else to avoid the consequences of their choices. The chaos behind my mother's voice on Christmas Eve was not something I created. It was the sound of entitlement discovering its real price. For years, my family had confused my patience with permission. That Christmas, I gave them the one gift they had never expected from me, a boundary they could not return. We appreciate you staying with us through the story. This video is completely fictional and created only for educational, entertainment, and reflection purposes. We hope that not everyone deserves the chance to explain after they ignored every chance to care. Sometimes the explanation comes too late, and your peace becomes more important than reopening the conversation.